over the summer, some of us got to listen to Ms. Davenport, the principal at Arundel High School, talk about this program and initiatives that she's doing in her school. No matter where you are in regards to your relationships with your students, whether you're on the freeway, a back road, or a dirt road, she's here to get us all up to speed so that all paths cross and we're all moving forward in the same direction. I think you guys will really like what she has to say, and everything that she's talking about can directly take place here at Old Mill Middle North as well, and that's ultimately our goal. So, without any further ado, this is Mrs. Gina Davenport, excuse me, from Arundel High School. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you guys very much. Thanks for having us here today. I brought Greg because he's the newest member of my team, and he gets to do all that kind of grunt work now that he's an AP over at Arundel. And I apologize for stealing him from you, but when you actually get an opportunity to interview for an AP, you want to make sure that you're picking somebody of quality that your faculty can get behind, because if not, they blame you. So he's doing a great job over there, as you all would expect. So today we're going to talk about sharing the road. At Arundel, we're trying to enrich our culture by making sure that we have trust, shared values, and that feeling of collaboration, not just among the adults in the building, but also among the students and the faculty. So if you guys will bear with me, we're going to go on a little journey with an extended analogy to talk about the road to success. At first, I was going to start by talking about the barriers to the road to success, but then I decided that instead of talking about the negative, let's turn that around. What ensures that students are successful? I know that all of you have students in your classrooms that are very, very successful, that you know are going to go on to do great things in high school and then beyond. What are some of the characteristics and traits of those students? This is the audience participation part, and we are being videotaped, so it's good to have some responses now. Perseverance, okay? Responsible. Motivated. What kinds of activities are they involved in school? Either. They're involved in sports, they're in the honor society, they're in lots of clubs. I'm sorry? Student government, the ambassadors program. So the students that are very, very successful are very involved, they persevere, they take on leadership roles, and we know that they're on the road to success. They demonstrate hard work, motivation, that kind of thing. So we all have students that come to school driving all different kinds of cars. We have some students that are driving those high-end vehicles when they get here, right? And then we have some kids that are driving clunkers. That's kind of what they bring to school. That's their vehicle, right? And this is an analogy for their background, their previous experience, their family life, their socioeconomics, that kind of thing. So they come with all different, I got really excited with Google Images. They come to school with all different kinds of vehicles. Some of them have real high-end SUVs. Some of them are on a little skateboard, right? Do you guys have students that are driving the clunker to school every day? Okay. So if they're all bringing different vehicles, that's what I refer to as the opportunity gap. A lot of the students at Arundel, and I'm sure some of the students here, just have not had the experiences that those successful students that you described for me earlier have had. They haven't been to museums, they haven't participated in church groups, they haven't done things in the community like that, right? Maybe they haven't been on a sports team. So if we're going to go on to the road, if we're on the road to success, they're going to need a clear path. Where do students get their directions? Hopefully from us. Who said from us? Hopefully they get them from us. Some of them in their cars have those really high-tech GPS systems. Some of them are using the old road maps that you can never fold back right and get back in the glove box. And some of the kids are getting their directions from a bunch of friends in the back seat of their clunker that have no idea where they're going either, right? You guys have those students who follow their friends' directions instead of a more reasonable set of directions. So what road will they choose? And that's where we come in, right? Because we have to try to get them on a path. And you guys already know, by the time they get to middle school, some of them are already trying to decide which path they're going to be on, where they're going to go. it's really sometimes a difficult choice for them. This cartoon says, this is a shortcut. This is the shortcut I was telling you about, straight up and over. How many of you have the kids that at the last minute want to turn things around and they think now, I'm just going to take this path and it's all going to be okay. But they don't realize how steep that grade is to get there. So where do we come in? Well, we're charged with a safe and supportive environment. That's making sure that they're buckled up for the road to success. And we're responsible for the engagement piece, right? Starting their engines, getting them going, getting them ready for what they have to do. So how do we contribute? So you guys have at your tables a placemat that looks similar to this, and you have an envelope with some different scenarios in it. And what I would like you to do is I'd like you to work together to decide whether what is happening in the scenario is providing a roadblock, or is it actually providing access to a student? Is it helping them to find the road, or is it causing a roadblock? If you guys will take about 3 minutes to do that. There are going to be some that are going to be a little controversial. That's okay. Just set them aside. Were there any of these scenarios that you found that were kind of, you weren't sure, you had some disagreement in your group about?
Words that we were quibbling over.
So let's talk about it. Which one did you have?
So we were talking a little bit about the weekly reading quizzes are given to ensure students complete text ratings. They're just different ways you can get to understanding and knowing that they did the readings rather than a quiz.
Okay, so where did you put that?
We put it as a roadblock.
Okay. Does anybody have a different thought about that one? About the weekly reading quizzes? My concern with the weekly reading quizzes is that's not very engaging. That's more like using a stick instead of a carrot. You know, you're saying to the students, I'm going to quiz you, so if you don't do the reading and you're not prepared, then I'm going to punish you by having you get a bad grade. And for some kids, that's a real barrier there. Okay? What I've asked my teachers to do, because they're always complaining that the kids don't read, what I've asked them to do is, instead of saying you're going to get a quiz on Friday, I've asked them to say, in chapter 3, a crime is committed. I'm not going to tell you what happens, I'm not going to tell you who did it, but when you come back to class, we're going to have a discussion about whether or not that crime was justified. Read chapter 3. That's a lot more engaging than, because if you don't, you're going to fail the reading quiz, right? So do you see how one of them may be giving some students some access and one of them may be a barrier? Anything else that you thought was a little controversial in any of those that you read? Yeah, I think that for some of our students, that's a real barrier, because if their parents haven't signed up for Parent Connect and they haven't, they don't have internet access at home or reliable internet access, that may be difficult for them to check and be current on their grades. And it may be our responsibility to make sure kids know where they stand and what their grades are.
And some of our parents won't give the kids access.
Correct.
So some of the parents have it and they won't let the kids log in themselves.
Which is a mystery to me, because I would think that the kids would need the feedback the most. Yes?
I'll say as a parent, I used to use it sort of like the quiz. Like, I'm going to check Parent Connect, I'm going to see what your grades are. And now I gave my daughter, who's in high school, the login. And if I see something, I just say, hey, check Parent Connect because something looks a little weird. So then I put it on her, and it's working out much better than just yelling at her.
Well, because you're also giving her, that's awesome. It makes dinner time a lot more pleasant. But you're also giving her the responsibility to check up on herself. And isn't that what you want her to do when she's away at college or working her first job kind of thing? Any others that you read and you thought, I don't know what this means, or I don't know which way this would go? You guys are very agreeable early in the morning. Nothing else that stood out as being a little controversial?
I have one. 50% minimal grade will only be given to students who demonstrate a good faith effort. Well, what's a good faith effort?
That's an excellent question.
I think that's subjective.
What is a good faith effort?
It's more than putting your name on it. It's trying to complete the assignment and trying to show that you're actually attempting to work on it. That to me is a good faith effort. Putting your name on it and handing it in should not justify a 50%.
If I wasn't being videotaped today, I would go on my rant about how the term good faith effort was put in board policy as kind of a loophole, and how I believe that good faith effort is individualized and situational. And as a leader, as a supervisor, I know that my teachers are going to put in a different level of effort depending on what they have going on at home and what's going on in their classroom. Good faith effort is going to look different depending on circumstances. So if I believe that about the adults that I work with, I have to think that that's true of students. Did the student not put forth a good faith effort because his grandma was in the emergency room last night and he was, at North Arundel or Baltimore Washington Medical Center? Or did the kid not put in a good faith effort because he's responsible for babysitting his younger siblings in the evening and one of them was sick? So there's a lot that goes into good faith effort. So we don't mess with that at Arundel. We give everybody that minimum 50%. An E is an E. If an alien landed on this planet and they saw that you have 10 different opportunities to get an A and you have 69 or 59 opportunities to get an E, what would they think we value? The E. Do we value E's? We don't really value E's, but our grading system makes it look like we do. A 50 is a 50. That's still an E. I don't know how much lower of an E we have to, I don't know how low can we go. It's like the limbo. Some of you don't even know what that is because you're so young. But anyway, so we don't talk about good faith effort. We give 50s. Now, if a student doesn't turn anything in, it's a 0 because we don't have anything there. And then we try to figure out why they have a 0 and we try to work to eradicate the zeros. Anything else? No?
Well, the homework will be considered late if the student comes to class late. Like really, you're already saying to that kid that doesn't matter how much work you put into that, it doesn't matter. So what are you really saying?
Yeah, you kind of have to watch the messages that we're giving students, right? Because if they come to school late, if it's excused, it's excused. If it's not, aren't there consequences for that? And should the consequences for a behavior be reflected in the grade? We have to be real careful as to whether our grades are grading behaviors or if they're grading knowledge and content, versus the standards. So we have to be really careful with that. Thank you for pointing that out. Anything else before we move on? Yes, ma'am.
Students must complete all homework assignments during junior in order to be eligible for a redo.
Yeah, that was my math department. I'll confess, I pick on math all the time. Students have to complete all of the homework assignments to be eligible for a redo. And again, we don't know what kind of conditions students are doing homework assignments in. And to expect perfection, that's a lot. Now, I don't want you to think that the kids at Arundel don't have to do any work, because they do. They work really hard. But you have to be careful that we're not penalizing kids for circumstances that sometimes are beyond their control. The same teacher who has that as a rule because homework is important also gives away homework passes for behavior. Well, if the homework is so important that I can't miss any, how come it's a reward to miss homework? That confuses kids. That confuses me. So we have to be careful with that. If all the homework is practice, that's certainly something that we can say to the student. If you want to do the redo, your intervention is to do all the practice. And you missed 2 practices, so let's do that. And maybe just practicing will help you get a better grade on the new test. Okay? But to make that a requirement is sometimes, we count a lot of kids out from that. And it's always the same kids that we're counting out, the kids that really need the support. So we talked earlier about successful students. We said that they have a sense of belonging. You guys talked about all the extracurricular activities. They identify with the school culture. They have positive relationships with each other, and they have trusting relationships with teachers. How many of you have ever seen where the good student comes in and has a reason why they didn't do their homework and they get to bring it in late, but that rotten kid that gives you a hard time comes in and the teacher says, nope, sorry, it was due yesterday, too bad, right? Also, learning opportunities. I sign a lot of field trip forms for people going on field trips. You know who goes on field trips at Arundel? The AP Kids, the Interact Club, the Key Club, all those high-functioning, really stellar students. They get the field trips, they get the leadership, they get the service opportunities, they get all the celebrations, all the same kids. We're leaving out a whole segment of the population. So last year, I talked to a group of kids. I started at Arundel as principal in January, And my first couple of weeks, because I didn't know what I was supposed to do, I spent a lot of time in the office talking to kids that were in the office. And I kept seeing the same kids in the office over and over and over again. So I brought them together and I said, why are you guys in the office? And they started to tell me that, you know, the teacher can see 3 kids walk by and not say anything, and then I walk by and they ask me for my pass. Or, you know, this happens and the teacher gets on me, but other kids get away with it. And we don't ever get to plan any events for ourselves, and we don't get to go on field trips, and we don't get to do anything special. So I said to them, well, if you did get to do those things, what would that look like? So we sat down with 6 students, 6 seniors, and they started telling me the things that they would want to do. So we made a club for kids that didn't have a club. And they named themselves the Change Movement because they wanted to change the culture of Arundel High School to be more inclusive of kids that weren't in all these things that you guys described. Because there really is something that is learned from those experiences. The good kids are good kids because they've had those experiences. Not because they have a certain gene, but because they've had all those opportunities. So we decided we were going to give these kids the opportunity. They named their friends. They picked 30 kids to be in the club with them. So we had a total of 36 students. And we identified what kinds of assistance they needed and who had influence. We wanted kids that were going to be able to kind of demonstrate positive changes in their behavior that were going to then influence other kids to do the same. We took the time to listen and build relationships, and they thought it was really cool that the principal was involved in these meetings because then they thought they had a direct line. That kind of backfires a little bit because now they're in my office all the time, but I have a very large candy budget, so we're good. They really did build a team. We took them on a field trip. We went down to the University of Maryland to do their challenge course, and they were great. Many of them had never been on a field trip before. They were high school seniors and had never been on a field trip because they were either the kid that forgot to bring their permission slip or the kid that, you know, didn't earn their points in school, so they had to go to the media center the day of the trip. So this was a big deal for them. We took them to Comcast Center, let them go out on the court and talk to the academic advisor for the men's basketball team. They got to go into the basketball team room and where it was all decorated with the history of Maryland basketball, which was a big thrill for them. It's kind of exciting for me too. Then we did the challenge course, and that's when I realized that many of these kids had never been on a team before. Because to work as a member of a team, that takes certain skills. It takes patience, it takes frustration tolerance, and they really struggled with that in the first couple of things that we did. By the time we got going, one of my favorite events of the day was this huge spider web made of cable. Have you seen it?
At Frostburg, but yeah.
Huge spider web made of cable, and the game is, the task is to get your whole team from one side of the spider web through the spider web to the other side. But the team members cannot touch the web, and you can only go through the hole once. Once somebody goes through that hole, then you can't go through the hole again. So there were about 14 of us on the team, and they had to have some strategy. They had to take some planning. So the boys were looking at the web, and they were looking at the team, and they were looking at the web, and they were looking at me, and they were looking at the web. And finally, Kyle, very brave senior, stepped forward, and he said, Miss Davenport, you see that big hole down on the ground? That's yours, and you're going first. And they stuffed me through that hole, and we got every member across. But what they hadn't planned for was Curtis, who is he's a big football player kind of guy. He had to go out on the top row because they ran out of all the little holes on the big holes on the bottom. So we actually had to feed this very long child through the top row, and it took a lot of energy. But we learned to build some team and some camaraderie, and we had a good day. We went to the student union for lunch, and I said to them, okay, it's 11:30. This is the union. There's all these food places. Meet me back here at 12:30. And they all looked at me. And they said, what do you mean, Ms. Davenport? I said, go have your lunch. Go sit, enjoy your lunch. Don't leave the building. Meet me here at 12:30. And I don't think that they thought that I was going to trust them to do that and come back. The adults that were with me kind of all looked at me a little funny, like, are you sure that you want to do this? We didn't lose any kids. As a matter of fact, I was sitting eating my salad and drinking my Starbucks. It's a lot different than when I was at University of Maryland. And one of the students came over and said, Ms. Davenport, it's 12:30. You're supposed to meet us over there. I was the one who was late. So, so they learned that, some adults do trust them, and that really went a long way. They also planned some events at school. They had a charity event where we had a student faculty basketball game, and we did that. And then we took them out to do some community service. We went to the Believe in Tomorrow House in Baltimore, which is kind of the Ronald McDonald House for Ronald McDonald Services University of Maryland Medical Center, Believe in Tomorrow Services Johns Hopkins. So we went there, and the boys planned a menu, and they cooked for the families that were in residence there, and they sat down and they ate with the families. The first time we did it, we did baked chicken, and they made a sauce, like a honey mustard sauce, and macaroni and cheese from scratch. We found out that they really are very good eaters. They're also very good chefs, and they love to clean up, which is something that I don't like doing, so that was a big bonus for me. The second time they did a taco bar. They had meat and veggie tacos, and they made the taco bar. One of the students said to me, Ms. Davenport, I've never had anybody shake my hand and thank me for doing a good thing. So it was really nice to see that, that they got that feeling of being appreciated, and some of them for the first time. And then we celebrated. That's what clubs do. They have end of year celebrations, so we had a cookout, and we celebrated. And we did all of this from March until May. It was quick, because these kids were seniors, and I had to do something because they were going to graduate, and I needed them to have these experiences before they did. Can you play that movie? So what I'd like you to think about now is I'd like you to reflect on what road signs do you post to students? You go to the next one. So I think that you guys would agree that we really shouldn't have any of our students trying to walk down the road to success alone. We really do need to make sure that in our classrooms, in our buildings, we have respect and dignity for every student every day. Purposeful and intentional efforts to build relationships to provide safe risk-taking and engagement. Define expectations for success and help students get there, and then leverage the relationships that we build into real outcomes. We did this presentation for our faculty the first day of school, and as I was going back to the office after that presentation, I got a call on the radio that one of our students was in the building, one of our graduates. And when I got to the office, it was one of our founders, one of the 6 guys that started this. He was there to pick up his transcripts because he was going to Allegheny Community College and he was moving out there. So, so that, because he had been on that college campus and he had seen what that was like and he started thinking about the possibilities for himself, he had made that decision. Mr. Ryan. So these are some of our guys on graduation day. We graduated 12 members of the 36. So we're taking new applications for 9th graders coming in, and the club is going strong. We have some mentors that are working with them, and they are actually, our next field trip is to the White House on the 22nd. When I introduced the field trip to the group, one of the students, Carl, he said, Ms. Davenport, I think we're going to have to talk a little bit about code switching before we go. And I said, Carl, what do you mean by code switching? He said, well, you know how we talk during Pride period and, and how we talk to our friends? We really shouldn't talk like that at the White House. I think we have to have more professional conversations at the White House. I said, okay, we can talk about that. And then Jamar, another student, said, and Ms. Davenport, I think it's not too much to ask for everybody to wear a shirt and tie, because we are going to the White House. So, so they're starting to kind of pick up on having that dignity for themselves and wanting to be seen as leaders and, as members of the Wildcat family. So, if you guys do decide that you want to share the road, Greg has painstakingly carried posters, share the road signs for you that you can put in your room. He's happy to distribute those. And if you guys have any questions, I know that you guys are getting students in 6.5 minutes, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Thank you.
Thank you.